Welcome, time for some art fun. Today we are going to do a review of these HIMI Maya gouache paints and really a 1-year retrospective on how well these work. I was really nervous to make this video because I'm generally a really happy-go-lucky artist. I love making art and I love my art materials. They make me so happy and my art studio is my happy place. And so it's hard for me to talk about any art material with any sort of negativity. It's like almost sacrilege to me. But the fact is, I got really swept away with these paints and they really swept the art community on YouTube at large away starting over a year ago. And I was swept away with them. I got them, I used them when they were fresh and new and came to me in the package. They were juicy and wonderful and delicious to dip my brush into. And now I've had them a year. And I wish a video like this had existed when I bought them, and I'm just putting it out there for you in hopes of helping you out if you're considering buying these paints. One of the reasons these are so popular in the art community is because they are so inexpensive. And I actually put my Mr. Money Mustache event, frugal, it does not equal cheap sticker on there from the Playing with Fire documentary premiere that I went to with my husband. And it felt really appropriate for this because this art set is frugal at $18 at the time I got it a year ago, probably up to $25 now, but it doesn't feel cheap. The paints felt really juicy and fun to work with, really fun to dip your brush into. And some of them are dried up before I could really get to use them a ton, but I did use them a lot last year, and then I would put them away as I got more into other art supplies, but I would come back to them, and every time I would come back to them, they would be more and more dry and they would take a lot more work to wake back up. So I'm going to give you the real deal review of these HIMI Maya gouache paints today, so stay tuned. These paints come in this very large container. It is very substantial, it's very thick, I'd say, and this is, for instance, the size, about the size and thickness of a ruler. And it is heavy. That was my first impression when I got it. It was like, whoa, this is big and it's heavy. You get a lot of paint for very little money. And so that's a huge positive that I think draws a lot of people in. Also just that it comes in these fun colors. I got this blue, but it comes in mint green, yellow, pink, a bunch of different brands make it now, not just HIMI, but Artex has a version of this. I feel like a ton of manufacturers are making versions of this on Amazon in particular. But it has this sort of locking cap and it has a lip inside that lines up with the lip on the box, and you just line those up, press down, and clip it like that, and it's supposed to be airtight. And the idea behind this airtight palette is pretty much the exact same idea behind this airtight gouache palette that I just got and filled with my own Winsor & Newton paints, where this one locks and you snap it open, and then it has this silicone with lips in here that keep this tight, and then the amount of gouache that you have inside, it's almost like it's like when you put a big blob of acrylic paint on your palette or a big blob of gouache on your palette instead of a small little dab. The big blob is going to take a lot longer to dry on your palette than the little dab. And the same idea is there behind this sort of setup. There's mixing space here. It does not come with a swatch card. So I made my own swatch card. It does not come with color names, or at least it did not when I got it last year. And so I made my own sort of best guess at what the color names would be. But let's get down to it. What do these paints look like after a year? And I have to say, it's not like I just let these sit in the box for a year. I used them, I opened it. I would use like a little spray bottle of water and just spritz all over them every time that I would use them. And sometimes I would use, you know, the end of the sharp end of a brush to mix them. And then I would put them away and wait to use them the next time. So it's not like I did no maintenance. I'd watched videos, I saw that that's what you're supposed to do. I would do it, and this is the result. And I most recently used them within like maybe a month ago. And I took my water glass and just poured water on them because they were so dry. And so after a month after doing that, They are a little bit tacky. Some of the ones that were super dry, after just pouring water on them, the ones that were really dry, some of them are a little bit tacky. This one is back to a rock. This one has a lot of white in it, the yellow. And see how low it looks? This looks like I used almost all of it from drying. And that's after just dumping water. And this one got the most water over time. This and also the white. Dun, dun, dun. Look at that. Sad, gross, crumbly, useless, white. I mean, that is, ugh. Like if you love gouache, is that not a sad sight? This is what the cups look like. And they come filled to the brim all the way to the top with juicy, wet, delicious, totally usable gouache. The gouache is not labeled as light fast. They're definitely student grade, not professional grade paints. But if you're just playing in your sketchbook, like they were a dream. I absolutely loved using them. But after a very short time, the white started to look like this. It did not take long. This looks like, oh, you just used a ton of it. No, I barely got to use the white before it started to do this. And enough time of just wetting it and it drying up and wetting it and it drying up, wetting it and it dries up. It's just, I don't even know why I have this in here other than to just show you. And there's this removable palette. It has this little indent so you can easily get it out, which I really appreciated. And this little palette is good. It's a color, so that's people's biggest complaint, is that it's not a white mixing surface. Usually you want a white mixing surface so you can really judge your colors. But I just wanted a mixing surface to get my colors mixed with enough water that they were the consistency I wanted. So I was fine using this. It stains, it beads when you first get it. And yeah, it's a color. So it's not a great palette, but I loved how big it is. And it gives you a lot of mixing room. So I'm keeping this. I use it now. This is all Winsor & Newton gouache that I've mixed on it. And that's what people really look at when they say this is like a good deal. This is one of the ones that dried up. I did not use this much purple. Purple is like an accent color for me, or like a mixing color even sometimes. It can mix some cool neutrals. But to see it this low, that is from drying, just sitting in this closed palette. After being, you know, having the spa treatment with the spritzing and the mixing and the letting it sit and using it fairly regularly. I mean, I feel like with all the art materials I have, to use this at least once a month, and it gets that treatment at least once a month, that's a lot every month to maintain an art supply, when a lot of your other art supplies, they don't require maintenance like that. Like, you got a colored pencil, you sharpen it. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you have alcohol markers, you refill them. But it's just, you want your art supplies to kind of be fresh and ready to go when inspiration hits you. You want to be able to hit the ground running and use your paints. And these just aren't that, not over time. So they are cheap enough where you could get them and you could use them for a time, and then you could, you know, fling them out or give them to someone who doesn't mind, has all the time in the world to wait for their supplies to become usable. But if you are, you know, not wanting to waste this much plastic and throw it out, and if it still hurts your soul, even with paints that are cheap, to see that much go to waste just from drying, but then you feel even worse throwing them away, because that's really wasting, and that one's so dry too. It must have white in it, because it has that. Anything, I feel like anything with white does this thing where it just shrinks in itself, dries up, and becomes, you know, useful as watercolor. Basically useful as watercolor. And that's what I'm gonna try to see if we can show you today. So this is gonna be the test. Let's just start with the yellow. And you can see what I mean, that's watercolor. That's not gouache. We've all seen gouache. We know how opaque and just delicious it goes on. And that ain't it. Here, I'll even do just a little fresh from the tube gouache, and we can see the difference. Okay, and yeah, look at the difference in, even I watered it down a little too much and went a little too fast gouache, and the pale translucent, you can see all the white of the paper through that. This HIMI, one of the dried up ones. So that's one. Now we're probably gonna get into a little speed version where I'm just gonna swatch them all for you and we can compare at the end. Okay, so these are my extremely ugly, hideous, gross swatches, but I don't mind because this isn't about beautiful, gorgeous, delicious swatches. Those are easy to get in the first month or two. This is what I can get in the first year of use. Warm brown and the black were the easiest to work with, as were the ultramarine and phthalo blues, and you can still see the black line, even with, you know, I was working them. But I tried to show you, and that's this one, you know, this super dry Kelly green. That's the best I could get out of it. That's the best I could get out of this sort of real dried up, and it looks shiny. That's the best I can get out of it. This is the pigment punch you get after a year, where you can just see what I'm talking about when I say you wet your brush, you swirl it around on the paint. You can't get it in the paint anymore. There's no dipping your brush in the paint like there was in the first month. This is, you can kind of swirl it on the top and you can get a watercolor-like pigment. I think these become perfectly fine student grade, play in your cheap sketchbook if you want some color thrown in, watercolors, but they certainly don't work like gouache anymore. And I have to explain too, I think I'm assuming I cut the footage out, but I made such a mess of this. I just dove in too fast. I didn't let my permanent black marker dry and just went in with a super wet brush and just completely smeared my black marker all over the place while it was still wet, and then tried to go in with gesso to like fix it and see if I could do it again, and then just gave up and did it here. So you know what? It's real life. I want you to see, this is like the real review. I'm gonna call it the real review, the real deal, something like that, so you can see this is not the pretty aesthetic swatch session. This is the kind of, let's get down to nuts and bolts. What am I getting? What am I gonna have after a year of these? Before I get my hopes up and get addicted to how delicious they are in the first couple of months, how long do I have with them like that? And my opinion is there's a honeymoon period and then it's over. So let me know if you had a similar experience. I really wanted to do this so that, you know, you don't have to. There are a ton of videos about these and how wonderful they are when you first open them. There are less videos about how they are after 6 months or 3 months or even 1 month. And I really struggled to find a video with instructions on how to even try to keep them juicy and usable. And I really couldn't find anything about when they're just dried up rocks and it's totally hopeless and you cry your artist tears of art supplies gone to the other side of the Rainbow Bridge. And you just have to let it go. Like, you know, I wanted to make this video about my dried up paints so you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. And I think some of these could have been saved if I was more diligent and had like a diligent schedule about spraying at least twice a week, mixing at least once a week, which is a time-consuming process. I don't want you to underestimate when I say, you know, mixing. This is a whole stinking to-do, because even with just making swatches, you know how it is. If you stick this in there and mix it real good and then wipe it off, you have to clean it, do it on the next one. It's a whole time-consuming process and you have to mix it really well. And as you're mixing it, you're seeing paint get, you know, wasted. And until you know about this, you feel bad about it. But I'm telling you, The paint you waste from just mixing them and then having to wipe off your, the tail end of your brush, or if you want to use a toothpick, that'd be fabulous. I don't usually have those around. And then you wipe the paint off, that's nothing compared to the waste if you don't diligently maintain these with water and mixing. And I have to say, if I did that, I don't know if I would have a mold problem or not, because I didn't do it. And that's a question I can't answer for you. I can definitely tell you the paints would be juicier and more usable if I had like a phone calendar reminder of every week to pamper and spa treat my $18 gouache paints to keep them alive longer. And some people would find that therapeutic and delightful and just put on their music or their favorite YouTube channel in the background and just mix their beautiful paints and know they got another week out of them. But for me, I like to get to painting. I want to get to my art studio. I work a job. I get to my studio. I want to do my art, get to the gym and do my class, do what I have to do. You know what I mean? Live my life. I don't want to have to maintain an art supply to that degree, especially one that doesn't feel like, oh, it's so special and worthy of that spa care because it's so expensive and special and light fast and important and you want it to last forever. It's like, no, they're under $25. Each of these, I believe, is 3 ml of paint, or like it's a lot of paint, maybe more. It's a lot of paint in each cup, but it's cheap student grade paint that has no light fastness information, no pigment information, no filler information. And that's what you would have to do to keep it alive, in my experience. And I wasn't willing to do it. And so I took a more realistic approach of what we probably all would normally do, which is we care enough that when we use it, we spray it before and after, or like, eyedropper water in there, before and after. And then you use it when you're thinking of using it, and you put it away when you're done using it. And I think ideally that's the standard. Like, that's what we should assume everyone is probably going to do, and then move on and live their lives. And this particular art supply doesn't live a long time if you take that approach. So bear that in mind when you're making the decision. I think a lot of people would still choose to buy these. I can't say I wouldn't choose to buy them again in the future, although I'm leaning very heavily against it just because it is such a heavy, clunky, expensive, space-wise and plastic-wise. So space-wise, to just have something and feel like it's so disposable. That's just not my style. I like to have stuff. If I bring something in my studio, I kind of want to enjoy it and love it and have it in here long-term. And I've learned that's not this material. So I hope I didn't rain on anyone's parade. I genuinely hope there are people who can be in the comments referring to videos that tell you a better way to care for them or an easier, faster hack for how to care for them. I could not find a hack for how to keep these alive. And I tried to do the things that I did find, but I guess I just didn't do them frequently enough because this still happened to me. And this is what I have after a year plus of HIMI Maya gouache paints. That's what you're gonna have. In my opinion, a set of student grade watercolors. So let me know what you think. If this was a helpful review, I hope I didn't draw too many tears and cries of anguish. I know if I saw this video when I'd first gotten these, I would be crying. I'd be really upset. I'd be really sad. I think they're a lot of fun. Have your fun with them. Take your scans of your artwork from your sketchbooks and enjoy them forever. And, if you haven't bought them yet, you can bear this in mind. If you have bought them, you can make an informed decision about how much care you want to put into them to keep them alive for the long haul. So I do hope this was helpful. If it was, consider subscribing for more content like this. And if you did enjoy the video or get anything out of it, it would be great if you would like and comment below with your thoughts on this set. Until next time, remember to create something cute